Welcome back to the laboratory. It's Chef Mark, and I'm here with a much requested video. And that is, what is the difference between this $20 knife, an Acero, and this $180 Wusthof? Does the additional money that this Wusthof cost, is it worth it? Does a $20 knife hold up to the rigors of a pro kitchen? Well, I'm going to test each, so let's find out. Let's take a look at each of the knives. This is my beloved Wusthof. I've had this knife for many years. It's a 10-inch classic chef knife, and it's my favorite knife in the world. I've had it for many years, and I just adore it. I recently found this brand called Acero, and Acero is owned by one of the larger knife manufacturers that produces commercial-style knives. Think plastic handle, thinner metal, kind of designed to be used in commercial kitchens. And what attracted me to this Acero is the bolstering. So this bolster is the part of the blade that forms what I call the snow plow, which leads into a metal part of the handle, which is flush with this P-Tech style plastic handle, and then the full tang. When I look at this, it has all the same attributes. It has a nice snow plow, has the handle that starts with the forged bit of metal here, and then finally the full tang. Where these really differ is the handle. So this knife here on my right is the Acero, and you can see just how much blockier the handle is compared to the Wusthof. The Wusthof handle is very petite, very thin, and this part of the handle here that rolls into the blade is far more delicate than this forging here, which is a little blockier. I find that the transition between the blade and the bolster on the Acero is pretty abrupt. It's almost a sharp edge right here, which can be a little bit painful if you're holding the knife tightly and for a long time. Whereas the Wusthof is a much more gentle curve. You can see that sweep is far more gentle. Let me hold them both up so you can see the difference there. There we go. I think that really illustrates. The knife on top is the Wusthof. Far more petite, easier to hold. I have large hands, and I find that the smaller handle is actually a little bit more comfortable than a larger handle. You might think that's opposite. As far as the belly of the knife, how tall it is, the Acero is not just a camera angle. The Acero is taller than the Wusthof, which actually is kind of nice. I don't mind a tall, deep belly knife. I find that gives me a little extra room to move the knife. Remember, a large knife is a safe knife because you have more surface area to work with. So your hands are actually farther away from the sharp bit right there. And then finally, just looking at the handle material itself, the Wusthof, which is down here I'm pointing to currently, this knife is over 10 years old, and you can see the blade still has a sheen to it, where the Acero is a flatter texture. It's more matte finish, and honestly, I think it had a coating on it that I feel like has rubbed off. All of my knives go into the dishwasher, which I know is an unpopular opinion, but you know, these are out in the wild. They're being used by students, so I like to make sure they're clean and sanitary before I move on to the next cooking class. And then finally, the snow plow itself, the bolster here, is very thin on the Wusthof and much thicker here on the Acero. So what it really boils down to is, if I was blindfolded, the only way I could tell maybe when I'm holding the knife is just this little sharp edge right here, which actually isn't that bad. I kind of compensate for it as I'm holding the knife. The Wusthof is slightly lighter, but as far as the quality of the knife, I think that the hand craftsmanship of the Wusthof really shows through in those little details compared to the Acero, which is factory built and factory assembled. It's nice. For $20, you cannot go wrong with this knife. I just absolutely adore this knife for $20. But if money being all things equal, the quality of the Wusthof really shines through. Okay, let's do some cutting and see how they work. I think I will start with the Wusthof. Okay, just gonna do the pepper test. All right, and one of the things I tend to do is I bounce my knife like so. It's kind of style, and you can hear the difference. The Wusthof bounces really nice. It's got a little bit more spring to it. The Acero is slightly deader. I don't know, just doesn't really do anything for the knife skill. It just looks kind of fancy. Sometimes I tap my knife to pop food off of it. Okay, so we're gonna cut off both sides of the pepper. Sometimes that knife tap just ensures that my hand is far away from the knife as I'm working. It's kind of a rhythm thing. All right, filleting. So filleting is one of those knife skills where a nicely shaped knife makes all the difference in the world. Okay, here's my core. I'm going to grab one of the panels of knives. Let's take this down to a brunoise, which means taking out the pith. Okay, I'm pushing nice and hard. This knife's got nice flexibility to it, but not so much that I'm losing that straight edge as I'm coming across on the cut there. Okay. What I like about the Wusthof very much so is that it's just nice and consistent. It's got a light feel to it. However, this knife is old enough, I'm starting to see a problem. Not everything is perfect. Down here, where the bolster meets the edge of the knife, I am getting a dimple here. So I've had to go in there with my sharpening stone and really remove quite a bit of metal here to keep the knife sharpened, shaped properly rather. I was surprised that that's happened already. I've had less expensive knives that's happened very quickly too. Kind of ruins the knife if that happens. I recommend never machine sharpening your knife. Sharpen them by hand. That's really the best way to do it. Okay. Here we go. This feels great. This knife, of course, has thousands and thousands of hours underneath it, so I'm quite accustomed to it. All right, it's more of a large dice than a brunoise, but you get the picture. Nice and consistent. Really happy with the light feel, how comfortable it is in my hand. There is actually a sharp edge right here on the top of the knife. There's a little bit of a sharp edge, which I think is worn down slightly over the years. I kind of wish manufacturers would take that down just slightly more. However, if this were completely rounded on the top, that feels unusual as well. Okay. Onto the Acero here. I got to tell you, it's much sharper. It's interesting. It's not even at all. If you look here, this is the side that my index finger rests against, and it's higher than the other side. It looks like the forging is just kind of a little less sophisticated. I'm not going to talk too much about the metallurgy, but the blade here says high carbon, no stainless, German steel. Okay, well, that's good stuff. Wusthof, X50 chromoly, and this knife here, X50 chromoly. So it looks like the material between the two is the same. I have to imagine the metallurgy is similar. However, the way they handle it, the speed at which they make the knives has a big difference. Okay, here we go. The pepper test. It's a little less precise. It's a little less precise. I'm pushing really hard, and the knife is actually bending quite a bit, which means I have to steer it just a little bit. I've actually never done this test before, this back-to-back test. So it's kind of interesting to see. That took a little bit more effort. Because the blade is thinner on this knife, the actual physical top of the blade is thinner, it's easier to see down through the knife as I'm making these cuts. And of course the knife is nice and sharp, but sharpness is subjective. I mean, I could sharpen both of them to a fine, the finest point ever, razor sharp if I wanted to. So I would say we're not going to even talk that much about sharpness. As far as how well they hold an edge, I find they're actually pretty similar. Okay, so as I'm running my knife, the top of the knife, as it comes across my guide hand and my knuckle, it's quite rough. I can feel that quite a bit. So it's making me kind of pitch my hand back a little bit because I do notice that. I would say the peppers here are a little wetter, like it's kind of breaking the cell walls just a touch more. And again, that might just be due to sharpness. It feels nice and sharp. I'm happy with these peppers. These peppers are actually quite a bit smaller with the Acero than they are with the Wusthof. But what does that tell me? I think that's just how sharp they are individually. So the Wusthof, I would say, wins the award for comfort and just the right amount of tune to the blade, how flexible it is. The Acero, gosh, the only way I really noticed the difference is using them back to back. The Acero is much thinner. The blade, the top of the blade is thinner. You can see that here in the video, the top here. So it's easier to see through the blade and see both sides of your work than this. I mean, it's such a slight difference that I've never noticed them until I used them back to back. All right, let's move on to final thought. Well, which one wins? Gosh, you know, I got to tell you, the Wusthof was an aspirational purchase for me. When I was a young culinarian, I always wanted a Wusthof. Couldn't afford one. I finally got to the point in my career where buying a Wusthof made sense, and I love it. So I'm certainly biased, but I think it's more comfortable, more precise of a tool. It's handmade, and you can definitely feel that when you use it. Who's the Acero for? Everybody. If you cook at all, I would recommend this knife. At $20 when I purchased this, and I don't know what the price is now, but I know they're still extremely affordable, you get way more of a knife than the price would suggest. They come in both 8 and 10 inch knives. This is a 10 inch, and you can buy an entire block of these for less than $100, but I recommend their chef knife. And what's nice about this is if you have a high-end knife and you're worried about chipping it by cutting through a fish bone or something tough, then have this knife on standby and use this for the less sexy jobs in the kitchen. I think what you'll find is that you don't have to worry about damaging your expensive knife. You can have both though. You know, these Wusthoffs are extremely durable. I joke that you can cut through a 2x4 with one of these and then turn around and brunoise pepper. That might be an extreme example. However, they're extremely durable. If you drop it on the floor, if you hit a bone, if you chop through something tough, it's going to hold up just fine. This is Chef Mark. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you click that subscribe button, click the like button. Until next time, keep on cooking.